Hey guys, it is Deidra Green. I am doing this from a parking lot because I am running around doing my trainings today, but this was a very important live for me to share with you all today. And I just want to talk about why I have decided to do it now. So basically, I guess a couple months ago, I decided to make the move to Philadelphia, and that is where my abuser is from, and that's where the abuse took place about 10 years ago. So when I moved back to Philadelphia, it was crazy because I wound up getting this text message from my abuser. And I hadn't heard from him in years. So I was just like, I was totally shocked, and I didn't think it affected me as much as it did affect me, but it definitely affected me. So the text message was basically an apology for everything that he had done to me and put me through and all of this stuff, whatever. I never responded to the text message. I didn't want him to know that that was even still my number. He's probably in like some AA program or something like that, or what have you. But it forced me to think about something that I hadn't thought about in a very long time. And I didn't realize that it had such an impact on me. But immediately I kind of started having anxiety, not really being able to sleep well. It was all of the things that I was going through while the abuse was actually happening. So, me thinking about all those things, that's what prompted me to say, you know what, it's time to finally get this tattoo covered, and I'm going to do that. And then that will make me feel better. I did that. I made my post, and all of a sudden, people started reaching out to me. You guys started, asking questions and, encouraging me and what have you. And I was like, you know what, it's time to finally tell this story and just be real about my experience with domestic abuse and, how it starts, how you get into it. Because, if you know me, you would probably think that I was the last person to be involved in something like this. A lot of my close friends and family were shocked that it was even a thing because I hid it very well. There was a lot of shame associated with it. There's a lot of vulnerability. There's a lot of guilt for allowing yourself to be a part of something like that. But after working through it over the years and years, that I've been working through it, I just want to put my story out there so maybe it can help somebody else. And I want other people to be a little bit more understanding and not, think of the stereotypical situation where it's like, oh, your abuser is like some drunk, because he wasn't. And, or the woman is like weak and she's in a situation where she doesn't have the ability to care for herself, because I'm not. So I just want, to speak about this topic from a place of power and authority, and basically to let the world know that I'm here. He did not win. And me telling the story takes even more power away from him in that situation. So I guess I just want to talk about, I have some notes here because I didn't want to get off track. And if you guys are, having questions in the middle of it, please feel free to jump in, and I'll, try to keep myself on track here. I wanted to do it in a 4-part series because there's just way too much to unpack about how something like this happens. So, and it doesn't always start the way that you think that it starts. I just want to be really clear that you don't wake up one day and just decide oh, I think, I'm going to let this person start hitting me, or I'm going to let this person start choking me, or, whatever, happens. And the abuse can range from financial abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. And I experienced all 4 of those types of abuses in that 4-year time span that I was going through it, because it was for 4 years. So I think how it started for me was in the beginning, where my headspace was, I was in kind of a vulnerable place. I was in college and I was working a lot. Like, I had a lot of jobs. People still laugh at me now and make fun of how many jobs I've had, because people are like, God, you've been literally everything. So, and I've been literally everything. So, at the time that this started, I was an insurance agent. And I was working to help people enroll in Medicare or whatever. And that's how we met. And I was just very vulnerable because I was always working. I was always tired. I was taking 18 credits. I was an honor student. Like, I didn't get much sleep. I didn't eat much. Like, and you could kind of tell if you were really paying attention. Some of the people at work really paid attention to me, and they saw like how I was struggling, and some of them would even try to help me out at times. So I was in kind of like a vulnerable headspace to begin with. I had just broken up with a long-term boyfriend, kind of like my first love type situation. Had just broken up with him, so I was just kind of like in a space of I can't really go heads or tails with this or whatever. And so, this guy had his own insurance agency, and he asked me, he knew I was a broadcasting major, and he asked me to make a commercial for him. So I said that I would, because I had to make commercials for school projects all the time anyway. So for me, it was like a way for me to make some extra money, and then for him, to also have a project that I could knock out or whatever. So I did the commercial. Everything went well. It was super professional, whatever. I did my little thing and gave it to him. He paid me for it, and we moved on with life. And then he said the commercial was so great that he wanted to take me out to dinner to celebrate whatever. So we went out to dinner, and the rest is kind of history. Like, we just started spending a lot of time together, and in the beginning it was wonderful, because I didn't realize that he was actually like grooming me for this abuse. It took a long time before I even saw any abuse, or even saw anything that I would have characterized at that time as domestic abuse, because in my mind I couldn't possibly be caught up in that type of situation. So it wasn't even an option for me that was even what was going on. So the grooming process was interesting, because he was meeting a lot of my needs. He was helping me with things that nobody was helping me with at the time. Like, if I was stressed out about something, and all I had to do was say it in passing, and he was taking care of it like right away. Like, paying bills. Like, one time I remember I was stressed out because I'm in college, like I said, 18 credits, my keyboard broke, and I was like, ugh. I'm like, what am I gonna do? I have to turn in this paper. Like, I don't have time to go to the library, whatever. He went and bought me a new keyboard. It was done. Like, it was just like stuff like that. So to me, it was like, wow. I was like, this is so amazing. Like, nobody really has, cared for me like this, and all this stuff or whatever. But what he was really doing was he was doing all these things so he could keep a tally of everything that he had done for me, so he could throw it back in my face later when I didn't act the way that he wanted me to act. So I realize that now, but I didn't realize it then. It was a definite thing that he was very calculated about and particular about, and he could read me like a book. Like, he knew that my love language was acts of service, because he would see how I would respond to things like that. And I'm sure if I didn't respond to things like that, he would have done something else to make me respond in a certain way. So yeah, he was definitely like, grooming me. So, after, months of things being like that, and him just like taking care of things or what have you, he began to become like more controlling and more isolating. He would, as far as like isolating me from my friends and things of that nature. So, it was kind of like, started small, like, why are you wearing that? who are you talking to? Just little things that you don't, it's not like really a big deal. He wasn't using really a threatening tone or whatever. He would just be like asking me questions, and it was like questions that he never asked me before. I had male friends at the time. Like, systematically, he cleared every single male friend out. Like, I mean, and I've been able to mend at least the relationship with my best friend now. But at the time, I had to completely cut him off, and we didn't speak for the entire time that I was with this person. And now, we're back to being friends again. But I didn't think that anything like that would ever even be possible. But that's what he did. So the way that he would do it, though, he had to make me get on board with that. So I need people to understand that it wasn't something he just told me to do, and I just did it because I was scared, in the beginning, because at this point he wasn't being physical with me yet, and he wasn't abusing me yet. So it was something I felt like if he would have just told me to do it, like, of course I said no. And that's how it started. But then he would start to manipulate me in ways to try to say, like, no, I'm not trying to control you, but I just feel like this is something that I need you to do for me because I feel disrespected, or I feel like, you're talking to this guy who is your friend, but I'm here for you. You don't need him. All of these situations. So he would just like play on that over and over and over again and try his best to make it make sense to me. So it got to the point where it was just like, okay, like, maybe he's right. And so I was like, I don't want to disrespect him. Look at all this stuff that he's done for me. And he would definitely remind me of all the things that he's done for me to kind of let me know that I want to, like, we're going to be forever. Like, this is what it is. So you don't need to worry about all these other, he would call them literally ancillary people. Like, everyone else in my life that wasn't him was an ancillary person. So he would stop me from hanging out with my girlfriends in the beginning, or like timing this amount of time that I spent with my girlfriends. It was just like, and he would say things like, you guys are having fun now, but you're gonna grow up later and you're not gonna remember any of this, so you might as well spend the time with me. Or just like crazy stuff he would always say. Or he would do things where, like, I remember one year, it was my birthday, I think it was our first birthday that I had spent together, and he got me and my friends like food, and he decorated my apartment with white balloons and white roses, and like, I mean, I was completely floored. And so my friends seeing that too, they could see it was almost like he was starting to manipulate them too. So he would manipulate them as well, because it was like, they were like, oh, he's so great. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh yeah, he's great. Like, this isn't a problem. So it was just a period. It was a long process. It was a grooming process of like breaking me down and getting me on his side and getting me to think the way that he wanted me to think. And then, so when I did say things to my friends that might be like, I don't know, and, or something, they would say, well, maybe it's not that bad, or like, or if they did say, oh, I don't like that, like, that's a red flag or whatever, I would immediately dumb down what I said to make it seem like it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, oh, I'm just overreacting, it's not that big of a deal. So it was, now I can look back on it and say, when I told someone what he was doing, it was like a silent little, it was like a subconscious little cry for help. Like, I don't know if this is right. Like, I'm getting confused, like, and I'm looking for somebody else to help me with my confusion. So, but because of his manipulation and the way that he had manipulated me, I didn't want to draw unnecessary attention to it. Because again, there's that level of shame and there's that level of guilt, because it's like, well, why would I talk bad about him? He's done all that stuff for me. And then it's like, I can't be, shameful, or, I can't be in this situation because you know, I came from a 2-parent household. Like, you know, we never wanted for anything. There's no way that I could have found myself in this situation. I mean, this guy's a business owner. Like, you know, he's no drunk. Like, this can't be what it is. So because it didn't look like what I thought domestic abuse should look like, I fell into it quite easily. So that's really the main point that I want to get across with this video. It starts with little things like that, and then it starts, he also had like I want to make sure I didn't miss anything, so I'm looking at my notes. There were also grand gestures that he would do, like these big things, like whether it was, oh, I'm just, you know what, pack up your stuff, I'm taking you here, we're going away for the weekend. And it was after we had gotten into some sort of like argument where he told me I couldn't do something that I wanted to do. So then immediately he would counter it with some grand gesture, and then we would have an amazing time, and I would forget everything, and I would, you know, the cycle would start over again. So if there's like this bipolar aspect to your relationship where like when things are like really amazing, they're amazing, but when they're bad, they're bad, like that's a red flag. Like there was no like evenness after a while. Like it was like it was either completely euphoric on cloud 9, or I felt like I was like in the depths of hell. So if you are seeing any of these things that I'm talking about, then you really need to take a close look at your relationship and a close look at what might be going on. So, and then he would do extreme things like, you know, just constantly calling me, constantly knew where I was at. And some people look at stuff like that and they're like, oh, that's so nice that he, you know, cares about you. But whenever I wasn't with him, it was like I couldn't enjoy my time with whoever else I was with, because it was like, well, when are you coming home? When are you coming home? You know, what are you doing? Who are you with? Like all this stuff. And so he's like, I'm just scared for you. You know, you didn't grow up here in this city. I just want to make sure that, you know, you're okay, like stuff like that. But it was like, it was constant. Like he was constantly, or he would like, at the time, I didn't know that he was doing this, but he admitted it to me later. He would literally follow me, and he had paid people to follow me. So he would, he had pictures of me, like, out and about, like, in places that he wasn't there, but somebody saw me, and so they would send him a picture of me. And then he would just casually mention like, oh, well, what were you doing on such and such street today? And I'd be like, how did you even know that I was there? And he'd like, you know, make some joke like, oh, you know, I'm always watching or something like that. And so in my head, I'm like, well, maybe I told him that I was going there like earlier. You know, you just don't put it all together. Like your hindsight is 20/20. You don't put all the things together. So, those are kind of the things that he was doing in the beginning and how it started. This is before, like I said, it's before he ever got physical with me, or before I ever knew that I was really in any type of danger. So I just want to make people aware that these are the red flags that you can be looking for. So now I feel like in other relationships, and I'll talk about this in another video a little bit, but after that, I still kept finding kind of the same guy in a different body, but I could recognize the signs of abuse earlier on and get out of the situation. So this is why I'm telling you guys kind of the early signs, so that if you know somebody who's in this situation, or if you feel like you might be in this situation, you really need to sit down and unpack what is happening in your relationship. And whether or not it's going to be a healthy relationship for you, because the longer you stay, the harder it is for you to leave. And I'll talk about how I eventually got out and how I left the situation. But first, I wanted to start with the red flags. So that's kind of the beginning of the story. That's the beginning of my relationship with him. And you know, some of the things that he did to groom me to get me ready for this abuse. And so the next video that I talk about, I'll go in depth a little bit more of when the abuse kind of started happening and how, like, what made me still stay, and so kind of just some of the other things that I went through. Some more of the misnomers as well, kind of like the whole, that's why I'm using the hashtag it's not what you think, because it's not what you think. It just never is what you think. Like I said, he wasn't an alcoholic, he wasn't anything, you know, he was a business owner, he was respected in the community, he had a lot of friends. Like, it was just, it can happen to anyone, and I guess that is the point that I want to bring home and the point that I want to bring across. So I hope this helped somebody today. I'm gonna keep trying to do these videos. I'm gonna try to do one a week for the next 4 weeks. I might have to do them like condensed depending on how my schedule changes, because I'll get, like, you know, requests to work at different places and different locations. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Jackie, for watching, Brianna, Anita, Taisha, thank you guys so much for watching. I really needed the support, because this is a difficult topic for me to discuss. I mean, there's a lot of vulnerability involved, but I'm not ashamed of my story anymore. So I need to use it to help somebody else, because if somebody else doesn't have to go through all the shit that I went through to finally get to this point, to be able to talk about it and verbalize it, it's been a decade. It's been 10 years, and I'm just now to the point where I'm like, I can tell you the whole thing. I can tell you what happened, you know? So, oh yes, thank you, Taisha, for sharing. And, you know, I would encourage everyone to kind of share this video if you can, because you never know who might need to see this. I wasn't ever expecting this to be any sort of platform for me. It was just something that happened to me that I didn't want to talk about anymore, so I stuffed it. And you guys know, I went on with my life. I started working and, you know, building businesses and doing all this stuff, and, you know, so it can happen to anyone. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad that people were able to get on. I know it's kind of like an awkward time in the middle of the day. So please, if you feel so inclined, please share it so other people can see it, because you never know what people may be struggling with. And I'm honestly really trying to save lives, because by the time that I left him and I was completely done with him, I was ready to die, because at that point, that's how bad it got. I knew that I would, like, if he started with me again, I was just like, I'm just gonna die. I don't care. Like, I'm out. Like, I'm moving. I'm gone. So I don't want it to get to that point for anyone else. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I see all your comments. I'm definitely going to respond to your comments. Please make sure you friend me if we're not friends, and you know, if you need resources, if you need help, like, it's just, you know, reach out to me and I'll help you as the best that I can. I wouldn't say that he broke me, Anita, because I'm still here and I'm still, I was never, the whole time that everything was happening, I was never late to school. My grades didn't slip, like, nothing. Like, I was never late to work. I wouldn't say that he broke me. He tried to. He definitely tried to. He tried to break me down systematically, and he didn't win. I didn't let him win. But he definitely, it was getting to that point. It was getting to that point. Oh, yes. Yeah, you're right, Anita. By the time I wanted to, but I was just like, it was me or him at that point, and I had to get out. So I chose myself. I was just like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm done. So, yes, I understand what you mean by that now. I understand what you mean by that. But, again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I appreciate it, and hopefully you'll get to tune in for the other 3 parts to my story. And, you know, hopefully we can help some people. It's the last day of Domestic Abuse Awareness Month, and I didn't realize that when I decided to do this. So, you know, it's more confirmation that it needed to be done. So I just want to thank God that I was strong enough to get through this first video, and now I feel even more empowered and excited to do the other 3. So I will see you guys soon, and I hope you have a wonderful day.